It was hard to remember what it originally looked like.
Here we are, we're looking at the timber groin works, and there's sort of two main elements I think we need to talk about. Firstly, we've got the piles, which are the posts that you see sticking out of the beach there. And presently they're quite irregular, but I can assure you that they're not completely irregular in that the toe levels are all driven to a design level and are all approximately the same, or rather on a slope which complements the beach. They're different lengths is merely a function that the trees simply don't come in standard lengths, and they'll be cut off to accommodate the top of the groin at a later stage. The piles are put into the ground using a method called augering, whereby we effectively drill a hole into the ground, and the piles are then driven into these augered holes, and that minimises vibrations, which are non-conducive in an area like this, not a good idea. The second element really to talk about is the planking, or rather the boarding, which is something they're doing here just behind me at the moment. To enable them to do that, they have to build a bund around the seaward end of the groins, which then allows the guys access to the very seaward parts of the groin and subsequently to board. The board undertakes the function to primarily prevent longshore drift or material moving along the beach, which I'll talk about later when we talk about the older groins there. You'll see that the planking behind me isn't complete, but it will come up to a level which is approximately the same as the slope of the beach, and once the recharge gone in, you really probably won't see a great deal of the groin. However, over a period of time, we might expect the beach to deplete. The groin is then there to hold a beach, which is what we call the design beach, i.e. to withstand a design storm event and protect Swanage wall from falling into the sea.
At the very landward end of the groin, we've also built in a plant access bay. This will facilitate the future maintenance of the groins. In the future, you will also see a whaling beam placed along the top of the groin. This will be left off for a short distance towards the landward end to accommodate public access.
This cinefilm shows that in the summer of 1962 there were no groins at the northern end of Swanage Beach, so George Walker talks about the work undertaken that winter.
My job mainly was taking the concrete down for all the pathways, and then down below the wall, the original seawall, we had to put big steel shutters in which had to be driven right down into the clay, and then you would backfill those with concrete. They're still there today. The other chaps, they would be there taking the piles out, which were driven in, set at a certain point, and they were driven down into the clay, and then they would add what they call whalings, big long pieces of timber about 6 inches wide, and sometimes they were that deep, and they would be drilled and bolted on, great big bolts. And as I say, we went up as far as where it breaks for the shingle beach at North Beach End, and then we came all the way back down and went down past Ocean Bay, down as far as the clock, I think. Other people must remember it, but we had this almighty storm, and next day we went down, and the crane which was on the beach was out in the bay, and all the timber that we'd stacked there the previous night, it was gone. It was as if you'd put a pile of matchsticks on the beach and it had all been washed away.
And what year was this?
Oh dear. I would say 62, 63. I mean, I was down there 2 years working. Here, this is me with my bulldozer. A little drop they used to call them, and that's what we used to use, you know, to go on the beach with, you know, to take stuff out on the trailer. These are all our mess huts and offices and all that, just at the back of the Grand. Beerham's of Harrow, this was the contractors that we worked for. Now this was a big concrete hopper which was running 24 hours a day, and we used to drive under this with the dumper to get the concrete out to take it down to the beach. This is one of the big, it looks like the crane with the pulley on it. This was a Geordie lad, and he used to put these spikes on the end of the groins, and he used to work with this tool called an adge. It's a thing with a shaft about that long, about 2 feet, 2 feet long, and it had a very sharp blade, just like a razor. And you had to be very careful because you was working on this and you was doing that action, you know, and trim the pile so that this would fit on, and then it was bolted onto the pile, and then it was took out to the crane, and they'd put it onto the crane, and then he'd hammer it down into the clay. You can see this one of more stuff that we've rescued from the sea, and there's all sorts of things. We used to have to put these down. These were for running on so it didn't sink into the sand like a metal track, you know.
Ocean Bay was looking a very different beach when work started again on January the 4th, 2006. All the machinery was carried north along the beach to Shepp's Hollow to start work on the groins moving south. A temporary compound area was put into place and machinery was assembled, ready to start all over again.
I'm making up some squares to turn a circle hole into a square so we can put the pile in straight.
Although it was early January, the weather remained quite favourable, allowing the piling gate to be reassembled so augering could continue. The temporary steel columns were put into the beach before the piling gate was fixed on top. Harry sharpened his chainsaw blades to shape the piles which receive the metal spikes, a far cry from struggling with the adze as they did in the early 60s. Many of the original spikes were reused.